Hello, everyone. Today we will be talking about marketing, and welcome everybody to the first AgileLAB marketing meetup. And today we'll be talking about what the thing is going on in the marketing world and how marketing is actually adopting agile methodologies and what's going on in that thing. Potentially everybody who wanted to join this webinar, which is actually free, are online round, and I will just jump right in. The first thing we'll talk about is actually me, a little bit of a gas-centric, but let's get acquainted. So my name is Anton Marchenko. I'm Agile coach, and consultant, and definitely working general manager for Mosaic Group Holdings. Previously, I was working as a vice president of business operations at Deliburn, and definitely was working as a vice president of marketing at Applon. So over the past maybe 10 years, I was mostly concentrated on marketing thing and operational thing, with predominant focus on mobile application development. And that's why I'm actually today to talk to you about how agile marketing is working and what's going on with the latest technologies, how you could use agile in your everyday practice, and how you could use agile to build an effective marketing teams. So what are we talking today? Why do we need agile and why it was invented? So definitely the first topic we will cover is the topic about overall agile. What does it mean? Why it was created? What are the main purposes for agile? What is the Agile Manifesto? What type of culture code we all need to pursue in order to make the process work? Second part is the essence of agile and how it does really relate to marketing. We all know, or maybe those of you who heard about agile, that agile was invented for software engineering by software engineers, but over the past 20 years, a lot of people from different expertise areas adopted this code and actually transformed it a bit to match their own thing. And today we'll be talking about how people, and especially marketing managers, adopted the agile methodology and adopted the agile culture and transform it into the thing which actually helps them to do the marketing work. Why it is better than a traditional approach, and we definitely talk about the different ways of how marketing is done right now and how agile marketing teams is created and how they do work compared to traditional teams. And what tools and frameworks can we use to improve efficiency? And today I will give you like a kind of sneak peek in a vast majority of different frameworks and tools coming from us to different agile methodologies in manufacturing and software engineering, which we could use to improve, enhance, and make better all the things which we're doing in marketing. Okay, so what exactly is worth doing during this kind of webinar? So first of all, asking questions along the way. This is a very good thing and very good practice to give more information and to get more information. So the questions is very necessary. And if you have a question, when I will be talking about the webinar, or I will be disclosing some pictures, or we'll be discussing frameworks, you could definitely raise a hand, or you could write the thing right into the chat. Sharing examples from your own experience. If you have some case which you want to share or which will illustrate something we will be talking about today, you should definitely also raise a hand and talk about this, and also like put it into the chat. And case studies for discussion. As I said, like I will try to share some interesting case studies from my own practice. And if you have something to add, or if you have your own case studies, you can also do that thing. Okay, so let's go. Let's jump right in. First of all, let's talk about Agile Manifesto. How many of you actually heard about Agile Manifesto? I mean, like the classical one. Yep. And this kind of thing was created 20 years ago in the very early 2000s by a group of software engineers who were doing an extreme programming thing and were mostly concentrated on how to make the process much more effective and much more flexible and actually agile in a modern world. And they done a lot of, like internal conversation, different researches, talked to a lot of people, and come up with a thing that you called Agile Manifesto. Agile Manifesto is actually very simple, and it consists only of 4 main points. The first point is individuals and interactions over processes and tools, which means that all the people who want to be in an agile thing and who thinks agile, who thinks flexible, knows that we should more concentrate on actual people, on actual employees, on actual groups and partners who are doing the job, instead of concentrating over the processes and tools which help us do the job. Second part is working software over comprehensive documentation. What does it mean? It means that the most important part of the value delivery is created product. And if you're creating a product, but for example, your documentation is not very comprehensive, that's okay because you're developing the value, but not the documentation. And that's a good thing, but we will talk a little bit more about that. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. What does it mean? Back in 2000, they know that a lot of time was spent on a contract negotiation where people were discussing scope of works, different types of things which should be included into the contract on the agreements, instead of collaborating between a customer and an actual software development team to create a good product, to get all the information needed, and to work on the value, not on the unnecessary stuff. And responding to change over following a plan. And yeah, we will talk a little bit more about that as well, but that's maybe the main part of an Agile Manifesto, which actually makes you agile. Yep. Modern world is a very different world from what it was before. And right now, you need not only to follow the plan to succeed, but also be very flexible and agile in order to adapt to the new reality and adapt quickly, to respond quickly, to be effective. And question to the audience, first of all, yeah, before we're going to next, but why it's all needed? How do you think? You could write your answers right into the chat. What is behind those Agile Manifesto? Yeah, we've talked about this a little bit, but what are the main purpose for it? And why do you think it's actually was created in the millennium, in back in 2000? And what actually happened there? Like, what are the main change in anything like this? Yep. Some questions and some notes into the chat. And we're going to this part of a presentation and this particular picture and chart, which is called the VUCA-World. VUCA is an abbreviation out of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. What does it mean? The background story of that thing is that our world is volatile, is uncertain, is complex, and ambiguous. What does it mean? It means that everything right now is changing and changing rapidly. And we actually, as humans, we are very bad of future telling, to be super honest. Yeah. If everybody, if anyone here remember how you're working with the software engineers and asking them like, hey, could you give me an estimate when that feature will be delivered? What amount of time you need to spend to deliver that feature? The estimates will be like quite wrong in a very, very lot, amount of cases. And when we're talking about the business, when we're talking about the bigger world, that type of thing happening every single day. But what can we do this? As a marketing people, as a business people, we also need to know where and when we get something, how that thing will be working, what will be going on around that. And in order to do that thing, like we need to adopt, we need to be agile. And that thing, that concept was created and it's called the VUCA-World, which actually represents the different ways of how we could react to changes, to unexpected challenges, to different unknowns we do have right now, to some complexities in any type of this. And if we will remember those Agile creation and Agile Manifesto creation back in 2000 on the millennium, what actually happened is that internet was in place. The world started to deliver and develop very, very fast. If you remember, like even during our age, for example, as myself, when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, I've started using those button phones like Siemens or Nokia or any type of those. But within a couple of years, we all switched to iPhones and big screen iPhones. And this actually happened during the very, very short period of time. What does it mean? It means that we as marketing managers and everybody in the world need to be adaptive, need to be agile, to embrace the new challenges and be able to do with that. And actually everything which is going on inside Agile structure and Agile culture tells us that you should focus on things that matter on the long term, even knowing that the world is changing. You should be focusing on how to be agile and flexible enough to embrace the challenges, but not building the long-term plans, which could be, actually not viable anymore because everything was changing. For example, if half a year ago, nobody was, not nobody, but not a lot of people were knowing about the AI. Right now, AI is a very big part of the world, is a very big part of maybe even like your everyday life. And that's how the world is changing. And we as marketing people, we also need to adopt here. And what's going on with that? So after some time, marketing managers decided, okay, so we want to be agile. We want to be in that type of culture. And we really need to create something to help us to maintain and expand that type of culture and that type of working process. And they just created the very, very same thing, Agile Marketing Manifesto, which is super, super similar to a standard Agile Manifesto created back in 2000, but with additional points in here. So let's talk about this a little bit more. We have five main points in Agile Marketing Manifesto. First thing, which is very, very similar to the regular Agile Manifesto, focusing on customer value and business outcomes over activity and outputs. What does it mean? That means that we as marketing people, we are creating some output deliverables. We're creating ads, we're creating topics, we're creating text, we're creating websites and landing pages. But instead of actually making our main focus and keeping our main focus on outputs, we should be focusing on customer value and business outcomes. Second part, delivering value early and often over waiting for perfection. And that's potentially also a very interesting thing for marketing people. As you know, we are normally trying to create something great. For example, if you're doing a Super Bowl ad, you will be definitely thinking about the perfect ad because you have only one chance. But in the meantime, you should be trying to deliver value very early and very fast, just get the results, get the knowledge. Learning through experiments in data over opinions and conventions. And I think like everybody here as a marketing people, you've already heard about that thing that we potentially should be focusing more on the data. We should be data driven. And that's kind of every single marketing people and every single marketing manager's nightmare when your client, for example, came into you and telling you, hey, like I've showed our ads or I showed our copy to my wife, to my grandma, to my father-in-law, and they told that thing is not quite okay. But this is not the way how marketing works. We are we're based on the data, and that should be the main part of it. Cross-functional collaboration over silos and hierarchies. And in this case, that's also a very big thing, and we'll talk about a bit more, that we should be able to be flexible even how we're setting the team. And responding to change over following a static plan. This is the whole thing. We should be able to respond quickly, flexible, be an agile. What else? In addition to that, we should also like go and ask the question, why is that not entirely like that in reality? And I created like, I shared with you one of an example from the Super Bowl ad. Yeah. And you could tell me like, hey, Anton, like you've tell us that we should deliver, for example, early and fast, moving the iterations. But what about the Super Bowl ad? And yes and no, for example. Yeah. Because first of all, yes, we definitely do not have a second chance. We cannot iterate during a Super Bowl. For example, if you're creating a bad light advertisement, you have only one chance over the year to show that on a Super Bowl, and it's working or not working, that's it. But what does it mean to be agile is that you need to not to, for example, plan ahead. You do not need to stick to the original scenario for that particular ad for about a year before the next, Super Bowl ad, because the context could be changing, the narrative could be changing, and you should be flexible, you should be iterating, you should be thinking, you should be more up to date in that game, and you could create an incremental parts of value, and we'll talk about this later, before you will make the end and final delivery, okay? Going about the teams and structures. So one of the great emojis here, yeah, agile in the red pants and traditional in the blue pants. The actual battle here is coming between team value and process and hierarchy. And we will talk a little bit more about that, but this is the way how most of people envision it. And this is, how to say, like the most important parts in Agile and the most, how to say, like outdated parts in traditional. And then when I'm talking about traditional, I'm not talking about the waterfall or something. I'm just talking about the way how some people or some managers is really approaching structuring the work of that thing. Okay, and what about traditional things? So when we talking about the traditional way of organizing teams and businesses, we're talking that in every single traditional way of business, we do have a kind of boxes where we're actually storing people's employees and expertise. For example, this is a sample picture which is representing the kind of marketing department in a kind of corporation, like imaginary one. And we do have like 5 or 6 different boxes which contains expertise. For example, we do have a content box which contains the content strategies and then people who is actually planning things like creative about the content. We do have a copywriting box which contains copywriters who are actually doing the copies, who are being some creative work. We do have a graphic design box. We do have a production management box. We do have a publishing box and UX box. And all these boxes are responsible for their own part of expertise. And in order to deliver something to a customer, we actually need, for example, to take a ball and actually put it continuously and subsequently into each exact box of that. For example, we should be telling like a plain ball and put it into the content box, After it, extracting it, put in the copyright box, extracting it, put into graphic design box, extracting, production, publishing, UX, boom, customer delivery. And every single box has a kind of big person standing behind it. Normally it's the boss, like a head of department, who actually have its own priority list and who owns that kind of box. And for example, me as a project manager who needs a customer delivery, I need to go to every single boss and to pass that thing along them in order to create that thing. And this is actually going okay. In that case, for example, if we're talking about the good things about this traditional approach, is that content managers working with other content managers, copywriters working with other copywriters, publishing, working with other publishing, and that thing is actually okay because they do very close collaborations. They share expertise. They can grow inside. They do have very, very expertise leads in them. But what's not going okay with this? Yeah. And what is not going okay is, first of all, the throughput time. What does it mean? It means that in a good old manner, traditional structure with all those time boxes, what do we have here? We do have this particular flow chart. What does it mean? If we will measure the time of how fast that particular ball or that particular customer request is going for all those departments, we will see something like that. We will see that we need to create a content strategy. So we're putting the ball into the content strategy department. After that, we're extracting the ball and putting it into the copywriter department, but it's actually going into the queue. Next thing is going into the queue for graphic design, going into the queue for subject matter expert, going into the queue for UX team. Maybe it's even bouncing around because the copywriter could bring it back to content strategy. And every single time they are going into the exact pipeline for exact that thing. What does it mean at the end? It means in the end that the overall process time when people are actually working on things, when people are actually creating value is, in this example, for example, roughly 19 hours. But the lead time, what does it mean? It means that the time we need from actual start to the actual finish of the work is 211, which means we have 10 times more hours spent on passing the ball around different expertise levels. We spend 10 times more time waiting. The task will be going from one person to another instead of actually working on that. And that thing was very, very viable back in 2000, and sometimes it's super valuable even right now, and that's why Agile Manifesto was created. How people in Agile decided to solve that particular question and solve that particular problem. So they actually introduced the thing they called, first of all, cross-functional team. What does it mean? It means that previously, and if we will get back, the teams are united by their expertise. It's a silo thing. It's a kind of boxes. Agile tells us, okay, in order to compress the time for the lead, we could create a team which will be already cross-functional, which will be focusing on all the expertise needed in one single place. What does it mean? We're taking a person from content, copywriter, graphic designer, production manager, publishing manager, UX expert, putting them into the one box, which is capable of creating the product and value from start to finish within one single box. And what's actually happening in that case? In that case, we are drastically reducing the time of lead. So people will be still spending the same 19 hours to proceed and to create the value, because the time they need to create the value will still remain the same. But we are drastically 5 times compressing the lead time because we are saving so much time on those waiting. We're saving so much time on those prioritization because people are working together, close to each other, maybe even in one room. This is a very kind of fictional example, but this is a very kind of good example, and the numbers are very good because over the 20 years of experience with Agile and different Agile transformation, what thousands of people see around the world, that if you will be moving from the traditional silo and boxes structure to that cross-functional team, the throughput of the things which you are doing will increase drastically. So you will spend literally 5 times less time comparing to the traditional approach. It depends, but actually on average, you're really spending 5 times less. Impressive, yeah. And that's how marketing should work, potentially. Yeah, the more time you're working on work, the less time you're spending on transitions, you will be 5 times faster than your competitors. You will be 5 times more effective because you could create actually 5 times more value or conduct 5 times more tests, which will bring you to the much better point in the future. And right now, the question, do you have any examples of this from your life? For example, does anybody of you can imagine or can recall any of an example when as a marketing manager, for example, you are working in a very traditional structure and you're actually like need to push something. Yeah, you need to, for example, create some customer delivery project like the new TV ad or the new copy or the blog post or something, and you're working with a very traditional structure, which means that you will need to go to one lead, go to second head, like wait time here, wait time there, because everybody has their own pipeline, they have their own priorities, and you're actually being stuck in those transition process, and you spend on a task which potentially should take a day, you're spending a week or maybe in a couple of weeks. Not just because people are not doing their work. They're actually doing their work. They're actually busy for the whole day, but the value is not being delivered fast. And for example, if you get that task like within one day, you could conduct 2, 3, 5 tasks during 2 weeks, but you're actually waiting 2 weeks till the thing will be done. Then you will need to launch the task, the next one. And that's actually even more, how to say, it's even frustrating. Yeah, it's really, really frustrating. But what should we do about this? Yeah. And in this case, we should actually remember the core 5 things about building an agile team. And the first of all, definitely, you should combine the different expertises which is needed to deliver the task. And that's, as I said, it's a very common approach. So let's start one. Common goals, tasks, principles, and values. This is like the biggest thing here. Yeah, you should make sure that the teams have their own common goals, that they have their own tasks, they have their principles and values, which unites them, and then they're actually acting as a team. Next part is all key expertise is within the team. What does it mean? We've talked about that. If you need to create a copy with an images, you should have at least a copywriter and a graphic designer working together as a team, not just a separate silo thing. And that principle is actually working in a very, very different spheres of our life. In the military, if they do have like a cross-functional team which could fulfill the duty, which could actually reach the goal and then continue to complete the mission within one team. Collective responsibility for the outcome. This is also a very important part. If we will get back to that particular structure, what we could see, for example, if we're creating that type of project and creating a customer delivery and something is not working okay, for example, your SEO coming the next day and telling you, hey, your blog post is shit, or something, like this. Who are to blame? You as a product manager, but there's a very common situation when a project manager will tell hey, it's not my fault because I created a good thing. It's for example, a content strategy which failed, or it's a copywriter which failed. And they do not have a collective responsibility for the throughput. Everybody and every single team member could tell you, it's not my fault. I've done my job at a very good level. It is somebody else in the team who fucked up. And that thing is working really bad because if nobody is responsible, you cannot work on your mistakes, you cannot work on your challenges, and you cannot improve it over the time. When we're talking about this particular team, we do have a collective responsibility because they're working as a single unit and they could actually argue inside, but you are putting a collective responsibility on them and telling you as a team fucked up. You need to think about this. You need to work better. We need to, talk about these challenges and think how we could be better next time. And that thing is very good. Independence in work, trust within the team. What does it mean? It means that in this particular case, in order to make the team creative, and to maintain that creativity, you also need to give them the possibility to work independently, to create something and trust. And focus on customer and their needs. This is one of the best things we could do is to focus on customer. And in that case, as I said, it's much easier to do when you're working on a single team instead of working with different types of departments, maybe within different people working with that department. Okay. In that case, we'll also should talk about one thing, how marketing team, if that thing is working, could interact with other teams inside the organization. And how, for example, agile you could be in a different scenarios in here. So the first scenario, and that's potentially one of the most widespread scenarios, is when marketing team working as a service team. What does it mean is that you have a kind of bigger team like product team, production team, development team, and the marketing is a service. The most common thing why I'm talking about this is that then you're working on retail or when you're working on a B2B businesses, you're not normally really included into the content or a value production team or a product production team or a manufacturing team or something. So the product is creating without you, you are proposing and producing the marketing service for that kind of thing. Different part and a different way is marketing as a stakeholder. What is the main difference is that service thing is normally getting, it's working like an in-house, like an advertising agency or an in-house marketing agency. When we're talking about the stakeholder, in that case, marketing is going upper and marketing is a main requester. And then the main, like, content and the demand creator working here. The good example here is, for example, from the mobile sphere. If we are creating and working in hyper casual mobile gaming, for example, we are publishing a hyper casual mobile games. In that case, we're not coming from product. We're not coming from features, from game design or something. We're coming from marketing, because the market is super volatile and we need to be able to fastly create product which is matching the market demand right now. Because like the marketing window is very short. And in that case, marketing team becomes a stakeholder, and they're actually coming to development team and telling us, hey guys, like we're seeing that thing is growing. We need to fastly create that product in order to get into this marketing window and be able to sell. And that's how it's working. It's a little bit different thing. Participant, kind of ninja stuff, is when a marketing team, or at least the marketing manager, is embedded into the development, production, manufacturing team. So he is performing, or she is performing as a part of that team, as the same as, I know, like an as developer, as a production manager, as a scrum master or something. So he's just a part of our overall team, and the whole team is working as an agile. And one more example is when marketing team is equal to any other team, like marketing team, product team, engineering team, and they are doing their own agile inside and working in parallel. Yeah, that's the different approaches. And what to do with those approaches? First of all, they are a little bit different in terms of agile could be set up. And second part, the most important thing is to think about how the process and those collaboration should be lean in those type of things. And we'll be talking about the two approaches. First approach is came into us from some Indian words. Yeah, it's called Muda, Muri, and Mura. And the second approach is coming from us from Japanese manufacturing, like a Toyota system, and they actually created those lean approach. And first of all, we'll be talking about this thing. And when we're talking about creating an agile team, and we're talking about all those principles, we're talking about common goals, expertise, collective responsibility, independence, and focus on customer. We've been talking about the different ways how we're collaborating inside the business unit. Are we a service? Do we a stakeholder, participant, or like a parallel team? And after that, we need to think of what should we focus on to make our process better. And in order to answer that question, we could use two frameworks. I said, like, one from India, second from Japan. And this particular one is around the three words, Muda, Muri, and Mura. What it means? It means that we should reduce the waste during the process. What does it mean? We do not need to actually throw the trash cans or something. We should reduce the waste in the resources in the process. First word, Muri. It's in red. It means the overburden. And in this case, this is a very good, like a visual example when we're talking as a truck, which is carrying 6-ton blocks. What does it mean? It means that potentially this truck is not really capable of carrying that thing. And it will be, for example, not the marketing managers, but the logistic managers. What it will let us to? It will let us to actually the fact that the track could be broken on the way. Yeah, it's like an overburden for him. What does it mean? We potentially thought about that we could save some time and save some resource by putting a 6-ton into the 3-ton truck and sending it to the customer. But actually what it happened by the end of the day, the truck is broken. And it's because of the overburden. The same thing happening in not within the trucks, not within the logistics, but in everyday work and in everyday life on the very vast majority of professions and expertise areas. For example, if you are putting too much work on your marketing manager or too much work on your designer, you would see that the throughput, you would see that the quality of the things which you are producing is decreased dramatically from some point of time. Because like we could do an overnight task 1 time, 2 times a week, maybe 2 times a month. But if you will be continuously overburdening things, you will see that the throughput and the quality is down. And that's the bad thing to do. Second part is Mura. What means? It means unevenness, fluctuation, and variation. What does it mean? In this case, we could see that we still need to deliver same 6 tons of cargo to our customer, but we're using 2 trucks right now. It's much better. But one truck is loaded with 2 tons and a second truck is loaded with 4 tons. What does it mean? It means that the delivery will be uneven. It means that people will be getting like 2 tons of cargo one time and 4,000 of cargo second time, it means that they will imply additional cost on I don't know, like even storage things. And when we're talking about the marketing part, this is the same thing. And when we're delivering the project, you should try to make sure that your work is consistent. You have very, very little fluctuations, because that will create less stress for people. What does it mean? It means that you will have the times when your team will be like not really fulfilling their overall capacity, or you will be asking them to work extra hours. And that thing is fluctuating, the team will be exhausted just because it's not like working that way. And for example, like what when you can compare this to, if somebody is doing running stuff, for example, like marathons or something, or like love running, like jogging on the mornings, you know that jogging in a very, very even tempo is much easier than doing like, those tempo changes. For example, you could really run like 3 miles within a single tempo, and that will be okay for you, because you will be like doing your breath okay, you will be doing your steps okay. But if I will ask you to run 3 miles, but for example, like first mile you need to run steadily with like 5 miles an hour speed, second mile you need to run like 15 miles an hour, and that's it, you'll be much more exhausted. You will be much more less in your stamina, and be definitely fatigued after this. The same thing happening in every single thing when we're doing work with our mind as well. The first example is muda, which means a waste. And in this case scenario, we are actually using the free trucks to deliver 6 tons. And we can see that we have this waste space in every single truck. And that kind of thing means that we are not using effectively all our resources we do have. Which is potentially okay. This is better than Muri and Muri, but this is definitely not okay, because we are still like wasting our own resources. And when we're talking from a business standpoint, if you have a work only for example, 2 people, but you hiring 3 people, and I know this is an edge case, but still you're paying 30% more compensation and salary for the work which could be carried by only 2 people. And in that case, when talking about this, they will be not overburdened. Yeah, you are not overburdened. You are not becoming a greedy one who are just putting the work of 2 people onto the 1 person, which becomes overburdened. You have like literally work for 2 people, and you're like hiring 2 people. You're not wasting your resources. But if you have the work for 2 people and you're hiring 3 people, you are wasting your resources. You're wasting your time, you're wasting people's time, and you're not actually growing in that case. So the main purpose here, when you're setting up the team and setting up the process, is to reduce those type of things. You reduce the overburden, you tend to the very even, no fluctuation process, and reduce the waste of resources. What else? As I said, like there's a little bit different point of view in that case. Is the 7 wastes of lean came into us from a Toyota company. And this is actually for manufacturing. And in this case, like we could extrapolate this on the marketing, on the product development, or on the software development. So let's talk a little bit more about this. So the first waste is transportation. What do you think is me? Yeah, when we're talking about manufacturing, transportation means that we will need to get some product or some good from one place and transport it to another. And the longer route will be, the longer path will be, the more waste we will get, the more resources we will spend on gas, on transportation, on different types of those, on waiting time. And in that case, for example, lots of different manufacturing spaces, they are then built like really close to the storages, really close to some other dependent productions and any type of those. In our, when we're talking about marketing and software development, transportation means frequent task switching, interruption, unnecessary long pipelines, and etc. When we that's actually the very great example of, yeah, from a chat, a very great example of the traditional, yeah, when we will need to throughput our, like a ball from each single board. The second part is inventory. What does it mean? In the manufacturing, it means that we create something and put it to the storage and not use it. So it's unused materials, purchase services and tools, but nobody uses in any type of those. In every single corporation, in every single big company I work for, I've really saw a lot of tools, contracts, and third-party vendors. Those companies were paying for, but nobody were using it. For example, like the very best example, I was working at one company and it was using Basecamp, but 7 years ago. Like the previous owners of the company who actually sold that company to a corporation, he was a very big fan of a Basecamp, and every single man in the company used Basecamp. And when the corporation actually acquired that business, they switch to their own corporate stuff. For example, they switch to Jira, they switch to, like any other tool, like Asana or something like that it was. And actually sometimes and somehow they forget that the Basecamp is still in there. First of all, they were thinking that, okay, we need to have a Basecamp to just not lose the track and the log of the previous decisions of the previous task, but it was like working in that particular state for about 5 years. And that's actually about the inventory. When you do have something which lies and you're still paying for, you're still, wasting your resources in it, but you're not using it. In the marketing world is the assets, for example, for ads that you've created, but you're not using. And in that case, potentially the best thing will be is to reuse the already created materials to potentially reduce the waste of resources. The third part is motion. Motion is, a good thing is then, as you can see on that example on an image, is when people is moving something. It's not as big as transportation, but maybe like, moving some boxes or something like that. In software world and in marketing world, motion is unnecessary meetings, difficult information shows, events without clear agendas or something. That's potentially also the very common thing, and you all potentially was on that unnecessary meetings, and during the COVID lockdown parts of 2020, there was a lot of TikToks when with the motto like this meeting could be an email. This is all about the motion. Second part is waiting for approval from higher management, waiting for work to be done and everything like this. And if we will recall the first picture with a traditional part, when every single box has its own head, and every single head should have approved for assignment, every single head should have an approved for anything about, we will be waiting. We will be wasting our time waiting. And this is like a very bad thing to do. And we should definitely be like, leaning towards not waiting, but actually doing. Overproduction is when we're actually producing more than needed, is necessary tasks and projects, lack of clear vision and something. The best example I can have from my own career is then, for example, your boss is asking you to create some big report and nobody looks for it. For example, you spend a time like a week or something to create a report, but the boss is actually taking on this particular small part of it. But you've spent a lot of time, you've spent a lot of resources on that. This is an overproduction. Over-processing, this is striving for perfection, manual work of the automation possible. And this is actually it. When you're, over-processing some Excel tables, when you're doing everything with your hand, but you could use one formula. This is it. And defects, errors, defects, revisions, this is very obvious. If you're making mistakes, this is actually, stopping you to the customer delivery, and that's actually increasing the time. So that was all about the Agile team. And in this case, we're going to the way how we're creating value for customers. This is also a very interesting part about the incrementality and about the way how the overall thing should be created in here. So what should we be talking about? This is a very, very common picture in every single Agile book I've actually heard. So it was like created by Henrik Knieberg. And when we're talking about the creating value for customers, we should be following not the very first picture, but the second. And I know that the guy, and for you who are working maybe in an automobile production sphere, could tell me that thing is not really okay. The real cars is actually built by the process like this. But when we are talking about creating value, what does it mean? We need to make sure that people is at least feeling okay on every single step of the value delivery. What does it mean? Is then we're creating a product, we cannot deliver the unworking, unfunctional part of that product to the customer, expecting him to enjoy it and expecting him to wait till the final delivery can happen. For example, as I said, if a person needs to travel from point A to point B, and we do not have a working machine right now, we do not have a working automobile right now, we could send him a skateboard, we could send him a bicycle, it still will not make him satisfied 100% because he potentially wants to travel, in a fancy car, but in case the demand is fulfilled, in case the need is fulfilled, it'd still be okay. But if we will just send him, for example, a wheel or a steering wheel from a car, it will not solve his problem at all, like 100% not solved. If we're sending him a skate or a bike, it will be like 30%. So he could still travel much faster than unfold. And that's actually how even the marketing value is created. We should definitely be focusing on constant value delivery and then constant incremental improvements instead of spending too much time and waiting until the final delivery will happen, because at that time we could lose the traction, we could lose the progress, we could lose the motion and momentum. We also do have a little bit different picture in that case, which is also very interesting, and that's potentially showing how overall mind is working right now. So the first thing, as you can see, is difference between incremental and iterative approach. So iterative approach, this is how most, for example, of the artist is working. So they're starting with a very, very rough painting, and they're adding more and more and more details before everything will get up. Incremental things, which we are already thinking of the whole picture as it should be and painting it by parts. An incremental and iterative approach is a combination of those. And in my personal opinion, the best thing in the modern world is iterative, because in iterative approach, you do not have an exact picture of what is to be done, or what is to be delivered in front of you. You know what problem should be solved, and you give yourself a flexibility and a space for creativity while you're solving that thing. For example, if we're talking about that painting, we could have an idea in our head. For example, I want to paint a picture of a young woman with an interesting smile. I do not know what it should be, but I know the overall concept. And when we're talking about marketing, or when we're talking about the product, we can try to think of solving the thing. For example, we could think of, okay, I want to make people travel from point A to point B faster than on foot. And in this case, it gives you more flexibility and it gives you more creativity in order to define a solution and to test it. And in this case, we could, for example, go, okay, so the problem is you should travel from point A to point B. And okay, skate is okay. Yeah, it's making it faster, but it has, a little bit of a problems and challenges on the way. Okay, we're now going to the bicycle. Is bicycle is okay? Yeah, it's much better than skate. It's much more stable, much more comfortable. You don't need to imply much more, your leg force to do it, but it still has, some challenges. Maybe we should go to, a motorcycle. Maybe we should go to the car, and that's actually solving the problem. It's an incremental increase in value, but it's still solving the problem on each single step. When we're going to incremental part, which means that we already have a very, very bright picture of the future in our head, and we're trying incrementally to add more and more into it. And that's actually okay, potentially, if the thing is not changing. But if you remember, we're living in a VUCA world. Everything could change around the way. And the good thing, and the good example in that case, I've got some friends in a company which was working on the AI masks. For example, if you remember, back in 2010, there was a Belarusian company called Masquerade, and they created a kind of first, very well-known public product, which was applying masks over the face. Yeah. Right now, it's very popular. You could see those masks on Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and any other way. But at those time, like 10 years ago, it was a very interesting new technology, and they created this for public. But I know the second company who were doing the same thing, and they were really, really doing that stuff. They have a very clear vision of what it should be, and they're doing, instead of iterative approach, very incremental approach. So they do have that vision, and they were working towards that vision. And what has actually happened when they were kind of on a stage 2, like in this particular case, the Masquerade released, and that was a very VUCA point. Yeah, the world became volatile, the world became complex and uncertain, and in this case, what an Agile team should do, they should refocus, they should rethink what they'll be working on, and then just switch to something different, or maybe just adopt their strategy. But they decided, no, we know the final goal, we have a vision, we have a strategy, so we will be working towards it. And the world told them no, and they actually failed. And that's the main example. Then the world could dictate to you the very different circumstances. It could dictate to different inputs you should be able to embrace. And if you're not doing that, you potentially will fail the competition. Okay. Yeah, we've talked a little bit more about this, what is better and why. And we're talking one more about this incrementality and delivery. And this is a very good chart about the time and the amount of the throughput in here, about the Agile and waterfall. And the main, as I said, difference between Agile and waterfall, or the Agile and traditional approach, is the way how value is created. Agile is creating value step by step. It's added incremental part, but every single time it's something to deliver. In waterfall, we are not delivering until the end. So we're trying to create a very big delivery through the very long time, but as I said, like the world is VUCA and it could be changing around the way. And definitely one more interesting thing is focus on outcome, on output. As you can see, like there's two pictures in here. In one picture, there is a sad man who's like, moving his bricks. And in the second picture, there's a very, very smiley and happy man, same moving the bricks. And what is the difference between outcome and the output? So the output is what the guy who's on the top picture is doing. So he is literally putting the brakes on a car without actually taking care of what of them are okay, what of them are good. So he potentially has a plan to just put 500 brakes on a car, and that's okay. The second car is actually picking the golden brakes or the average brakes and put into the car. And that's actually how it's working. So I have a little bit different example, but it's very interesting. It's from a software development. So while working as a daily burn, we've got lots of different conversations with developers. And when we're talking about the way how team is structured, about how Agile team is working and what should everybody do, and especially like the way how software engineers is being dedicated to some results and value, we've got a very interesting phrase from one of our architects who just told that, the software engineers, they could be split into two big groups. First group is code writers, and the second group is value developers. And the reason why he said that, and the main difference, is that the code writers is a guy who is just writing code, 9 to 5, closing the notebook and going home. He just needs to write second amount of code in the time, and that's actually it. The value developer, he's not focused on the output. He's focused on the outcome. He's focused on value. He could write more code. He could write less code, but this doesn't matter for him. He doesn't measure his work and his efficiency by the line of code. He measures his work and efficiency by the way how much and how fast value was delivered. And this is the very big thing. And when we're talking about the marketing activities in here, for example, we could talk about like you're working with your internal copywriter, and you're asking that copywriter and telling him that, hey, we have a task which we need to improve sales. And the copywriter could think of it in two ways. He could think of, okay, you could set me the task and I will create as much copy as you needed, for example, like a Facebook slogans. And he will tell me, okay, like I will create like 50 new Facebook slogans for you. Or he could tell you that I will be focused on creating the most effective and valuable slogan. So he will be working iteratively and testing it, and he maybe could create not 50, but like 30, but during that iterative process, it will be much more valuable for you. And in that case, that's the difference between outcome and output. We should not focus on the amount of something that you deliver. We should focus on the value of the things that should be delivered. We could deliver less, but more valuable instead of delivering more, but less valuable. And in order to do that thing, in order to make that thing happen, as I said, like we should remember all of those stuff, including like the way how the team is working, the way how the team is structured. But we also do have something and some tools which could actually help us as a team on a way to make that thing work. For example, first thing we should do is definitely to understand who our customer is. As a marketing people, you definitely know that this is the first starting point of every single marketing campaign. We should know who we're selling to. We should know who we're communicating to. And in Agile practices, we, for example, in our like Agile marketing course held up by AgileLAB, we're also doing that thing, and we're talking about the templates like user persona template, empathy map canvas, jobs to be done canvas, and all that thing like with a practice, with real life examples in order to dig into the way how to understand your audience, how to dig into the insights, how to find those insights and what to do with them later. What else we should do with them? We should understand what those people wanted. What is important for them? Like, yeah, we should understand what the value we should propose him. And one of the interesting ways and one of the super great frameworks we're teaching for that course is the value proposition canvas. We're talking about the way how we should utilize the knowledge about the audience. What questions should we ask ourselves in order to form the great value proposition, in order to form the unique value proposition, unique selling proposition, in order to sell more, in order to actually sell very, very precisely to the things and to the needs that people needed. We also need to understand how people is behaving, and in that case, we're talking about the different ways of understanding the customer journey, like customer journey mapping, like value streaming, the describing the process of interaction, describing it from the emotional standpoint, from the value standpoint, from the utility standpoint, talking about each single step, talking about the funnels, talking about how we communicate people, what people do see, what people do think, and many other things. We're talking about what and where we can improve, and we're also, like talking a lot about the growth approach, about unit economics, about the way how we should structure our funnels, what we should do, and where we should find the most important parts of that funnel to improve on, where we should deploy the efforts, where we should deploy the resources in order to get the maximum output. And definitely planning and taking action. And in this case, you definitely have much more in your arsenal in terms of, like different frameworks and everything like that. Not only like the to-do list or something. You could use the story mapping. You could use the marketing backlog. You could use the same scoring practices as we do in the product management or in the software development. And you could also iteratively work on that. You could also like brainstorm and organize this in a very, not only fancy, but very visualized models. Like in this example, like it's a user story map. And definitely, yeah, we will be talking about how to work on this, like repeating that, about the design thinking, about the way how the overall research practice should be set up, how to perform different types of activities, how to perform different types of experiments, and how to extract maximum value out of it. Okay, and yeah, seems like we're almost run out of time, and we have a couple of Q&A questions. Yeah. During that type of thing. Okay, so as I said, like you could just send those Q&A questions into the chat. I will try to, I said like answer them right now, or as I said, like you could just join our next courses and the AgileLAB with a little bit more, not a little bit more, with a lot of more thing. Yeah, and the first question, yeah, thank you for the webinar. Yeah, thank you too for joining us today. Yeah, and the question is how hard is to build an Agile team, and what is needed to transform the team, to Agile? Is there any best practice or the ready example? Yeah, and in this case, I can tell you that it is, and during the courses in the AgileLAB, and especially in the marketing transformation course, we also do have a template, or not actually a template, I would call it a framework on how to perform the Agile transformation in an organization. And in that case, we will be talking about what is needed to be there, for example, like Agile courses and any type of those. We'll also do teach about the ADKAR model, which is also like a certified model, which is helping people to transform their business on an Agile, and the different ways of how companies should be organized, what is the best structure for even the marketing departments and any type of those. Yeah, what else about the maths and the metrics and everything? Yeah, maths and metrics. As I said, like we do have a topic of the growth part. Like this is like a pirate funnel canvas, and we do have a unit economy as well in that type of course, which will be also focusing on the metrics, on the way how we're doing, and any type of those. Okay. Yeah, let's just pick one more question, and yeah, that will be all for today. Yeah. Okay. Okay, and yeah, is it working for B2C only or B2B, and how it's connected if I'm working, for example, for retail? Yeah, so as I said, like in this course, it's maybe my fault because I was actually sending and throwing to you a lot of examples from a software development, but that particular approach, and I said like Agile approach, is not plainly concentrated on software. To be super honest, the overall Agile approach, like Kanban stuff, like Lean stuff, came to add software development from manufacturing. So as I said, like that kind of thing could work in any type of the business. It could be manufacturing, it could be banking. And for example, I know that one of the most successful cases of Agile transformation is actually banking sphere. And they're doing a lot of steps towards there. So you could do it here, you could do it in retail, you could do it in Horeca, you could do it in any type of those. Okay. Yep. Okay, so as I said, like our time is almost up. Thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you everybody for listening for me for that actual hour. Very, very glad to see you today. Thank you all. You could have all the information down below in the links. You could reach the AgileLAB representative if you need more consultation or something better. And yeah, as I said, thank you guys. Thank you for joining. and have a nice day. Hope see you soon.